What if I told you that the color of your skin was decided by nothing more than where your ancestors lived on this planet? What if I told you that the very differences people use to divide us today were actually created by geography, not by God's design for superiority? And what if I told you that over 1,400 years ago, a final message was delivered to humanity that completely destroyed every single argument used to discriminate against people based on their appearance? Today, we're going to uncover a truth so powerful that it will change how you see every person you meet. We're going to discover why the last sermon of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, contains words that could end racism forever if we truly understood them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the story of Hazrat Bilal, a former African slave who became one of the most honored companions of the Prophet, holds the key to solving one of humanity's greatest problems. But here's what will shock you the most. The very system of racial discrimination that divides us today was intentionally created less than 400 years ago for one purpose: to justify slavery and economic exploitation. Before that, the world looked at people very differently. So stay with me, because what you're about to learn will not only open your eyes, but might just change your heart forever. Let's start with a simple scientific fact that everyone should know, but most people never think about. The color of human skin is determined by one main factor: how much sunlight your ancestors received over thousands of years. Africa sits directly under the equator, where the sun shines the strongest. People living there for generations developed more melanin, a natural protection against harmful sun rays. This gave them darker skin. Europe, on the other hand, is much further from the equator. Less sunlight meant people there needed less melanin to absorb what little vitamin D they could get from the weaker sun. This gave them lighter skin. It's that simple. Geography, not genetics of superiority or inferiority, determines skin color. Now here's something amazing to think about. If we took a European family and moved them to live in Africa for thousands of years, their descendants would gradually develop darker skin. This is basic human adaptation. The Quran tells us in Surah Ar-Rum, verse 22, "And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity of your languages and colors. And this are signs for those who know." Allah is telling us that our different colors are signs of his creativity and power, not reasons to hate or look down on each other. He distributed us across the earth so that each land would have its caretakers. Here's something that might surprise you. The idea of treating people as inferior because of their skin color is actually a recent invention in human history. Before the 1600s, slavery existed, but it wasn't based on race. People were enslaved because of war, debt, or conquest, not because of how they looked. But when European colonists and Americans needed workers for their farms and plantations, they faced a problem. They had been using indentured servants, mostly poor Europeans who worked for a few years and then became free. But these servants would eventually gain their freedom and demand rights. The colonists needed a permanent workforce that could never claim freedom or equality. So they created something new and evil: racial slavery. They said that people with dark skin were naturally meant to be slaves, and people with light skin were naturally meant to be masters. They created laws saying that children of enslaved Africans would automatically be enslaved for life. They made skin color the deciding factor for who was human and who was property. This wasn't God's design. This wasn't natural. This was a deliberate system created by humans to exploit other humans. The tragic result is that millions of Africans were torn from their families, shipped across oceans in horrible conditions, and forced to work without pay for generations. Even after slavery was officially ended, new laws were created to keep African Americans as second-class citizens. The effects of this evil system continue to hurt communities today. But America isn't the only place where people created systems to divide humanity. In India, we see the caste system, another human-made division that places people in categories based on birth rather than character or deeds. The caste system tells people that if you're born into a certain family, you're automatically higher or lower than others. It restricts who you can marry, what job you can have, and how others should treat you. Like racial discrimination, it takes something external, in this case, family background, and uses it to determine a person's worth. We see similar divisions all around the world. In some places, people are treated differently because of their tribe or clan. In others, it's because of their economic background or the language they speak. Everywhere we look, humans have found ways to create us versus them thinking. But Islam came with a radical message that challenged all of these divisions. When Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, began preaching Islam in Arabia, he entered a society obsessed with tribal superiority. Arabs looked down on non-Arabs. Wealthy families considered themselves better than poor families. People took pride in their ancestors and used family lineage to claim superiority over others. Islam shattered all of these barriers with one simple but revolutionary principle. The only thing that makes one person better than another in God's eyes is their righteousness and good deeds. The Quran states clearly in Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 13, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. Read those words again, that you may know one another. Our differences aren't meant to divide us. They're meant to help us learn from each other and grow together. And the only measure of true nobility is righteousness, not skin color, not family background, not wealth or status. To understand how revolutionary this message was, we need to look at the story of Hazrat Bilal ibn Rabah. May Allah be pleased with him. Bilal was born into slavery in Mecca. He was an African, and in that society, he was considered the lowest of the low. His master would torture him under the hot desert sun, placing huge rocks on his chest and demanding that he abandon his faith in Islam. But Bilal refused. He would say Ahad, Ahad, meaning one God, one God. Even as he was being tortured, his faith was stronger than his chains. When Abu Bakr, the Prophet's closest companion, heard about Bilal's suffering, he immediately bought Bilal's freedom. But here's what's beautiful. Bilal didn't just become a free man. He became one of the most honored companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Prophet chose Bilal to be the muezzin. When the Muslims conquered Mecca, the Prophet asked Bilal to climb on top of the Kaaba, the holiest site in Islam, and give the call to prayer. In his final sermon, delivered during his last pilgrimage, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave humanity a message that, if truly followed, would end discrimination forever. He said, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor does a non-Arab have any superiority over an Arab. A white person has no superiority over a black person, nor does a black person have any superiority over a white person, except by piety and good action. These weren't just nice words. This was a direct challenge to every system of discrimination that existed then and exists now. The Prophet was telling over 100,000 people that everything their society had taught them about human worth was wrong. He continued, learn that every Muslim is a brother to every Muslim and that the Muslims constitute one brotherhood. Nothing shall be legitimate to a Muslim which belongs to a fellow Muslim unless it was given freely and willingly. One brotherhood, one Ummah, united not by color, not by language, not by nationality, but by faith and shared values. The Islamic teachings on human equality aren't just theoretical, they're practical and revolutionary. Let's look at what the Quran and Hadith actually say. First, the Quran tells us that all humans come from the same source. In Surah An-Nisa, verse 1, O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul and created from it its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women. One soul. We all trace back to the same beginning. This destroys any argument that some races or groups are fundamentally different or superior. Second, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, whoever has a mustard seed's weight of pride in his heart will not enter paradise. When asked what pride meant, he explained, pride is rejecting the truth and looking down on people. Looking down on people because of their appearance, background, or status is not just wrong. It's a spiritual disease that blocks us from paradise. Third, Islam teaches that our deeds are what matter, not our appearance. The Quran says in Surah Al-Isra, verse 15, whoever is guided is only guided for his own soul, and whoever goes astray only goes astray against it. Each person is responsible for their own actions. You can't judge someone's character by their skin color, their accent, or their family background. You can only judge them by how they treat others and how they live their life. So how do we break these chains of discrimination? How do we build the one Ummah that Islam calls for? First, we need to examine our own hearts.